All right, here's our next project we're fixing to get started on. It's the cp100 labounty pulverizer, and these bottom plates here have some pretty significant wear on them. They've done got really thin right here in this area, and it kind of tapers back. They're thicker back here. We've got it here at our shop, and instead of adding material to this, making a layer cake out of it, I've looked at it and talked with the customer, and we're just gonna completely remove both sides and go back with some 2-inch Hardox 450 material. And this will get it back to close to original, the way it was manufactured. And then on top of that, we're gonna add some wear plates, probably some chalky bars, some hard surfacing to keep all the wear off the new steel that we put back in. It's just there's some cracks going on right in here, and my thoughts on that is just because the material's not thick enough, and there's really no good way to go about cutting it and replacing it. You're still gonna have a lot of labor involved in that. So my thoughts are, if we're gonna put a lot of money into something, might as well give it some fresh new metal and go from there. So we're gonna try to go step by step on this process and let y'all see how we do it. All right, so the first step to cut these off, instead of getting under here and arc gouging or flipping this thing over and arc gouging all this weld out, I'm just gonna cut from this side down from the top, cutting straight through the weld, and I wanna stay up against this plate as much as I can. So in order to get some lines up here to go off of, instead of just guessing, we're gonna do this right here. I'm gonna reference this, just a straight edge against this plate, and Caden's gonna line his up, just kind of eyeballing it. And now we've got one side of each, so we can just take a measurement of this material here. It's 2 inches. So then we can come up here and give a 2-inch. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is come in here. This isn't really, a lot of this thickness right here is weld. So the next thing we're gonna do is come straight in, and we're gonna find where this piece ends, somewhere up in here, and we are gonna just cut along that, and that'll get rid of most of this material. This is where the plate stopped, and this is where it was wore. This plate was wore completely off. All right, we got that piece cut away. Now, this is not the only way to get these off. You could have flipped this over, and you could have just simply gouged out this weld. That's just a lot of gouging. It can be done. Just depending on the situation, I guess, is depending on how I would go about doing it. For this situation, I feel like just making cuts with the torch is easier. So we sliced it, got it to where we can then cut this way, and then hopefully you can see in that video that I was able to just kind of go up and down, and the only reason why I'm going up and down is to get in there so I can see. If I was just making a single cut, I couldn't really see when I was dropping down enough to expose this layer right here. So this right here is the end of this piece of plate, and then here is just a little dab of weld that we've still got to get off. So here in just a little bit, probably once we get all these away, then now we can take the torch and kind of come in at an angle and give this piece just a slight little bevel, and that'll ensure we get all the weld material off of this. It gives us a good prep. We still got a little bit of washing we can do right here. I can get a little closer and probably get all that off. And this is the tooth pocket. This right here is what was losing support from this piece of plate not coming up over and getting welded right here. It's completely wore away. I know it's still thick, and it probably could have been saved by not replacing all this, but when you start to think of having to cut and splice and try to get it back as strong as it once was, well, then you start to think, well, that's just going to be as much work as just cutting it away and giving it a brand new piece. So like I said, that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep chipping away at this thing, get all this, cut as much as we can with the torch, and then we'll both get to grinding on it and get our new piece prepped. Going. All right, we got the plates removed. Both bottoms are removed. And right here on this pocket, there was some pretty bad cracking right in this area. So we went ahead and gouged out on every one. And we're gonna work on first thing that we're gonna do before we go back with any new material is we're gonna come on here and re-weld that on all those. We had some cracking on this other side too, coming up on all these sides. All those cracks are welded up, and Caden's gonna be welding on these, and I'm gonna start working on a template for this, and we're gonna set up the seamless. We got some 2-inch thick 450 plate there that we're gonna make these out of, and do some hard surfacing on all this when we get done. For all these little cracks and just touch-ups, we've been using this HTP 2800i MIG welder. It runs through dual shield great, no issues there. And since we had there's a seam in here, we gouged all the way down to where this piece meets this piece, and the pressures, sometimes over here we were able to do it a little bit, but still giving us a little trouble. So he's gonna stick the stick rod stinger right in this side, and all you gotta do is hit one button there, and this machine right here will go from MIG to stick with you can do it just a few seconds and you can swap over. You don't have to do anything with the MIG gun. It's nice. And whatever you had your settings on for stick the last time, you're back on that. So if we were on 1/8 last time, you hit stick and you're back on 1/8. Same as when you go back to dual shield, you'll be right on the same settings that you were. So far, this machine, it's not a huge machine, but for a lot of general repairs and doing little welds like this, where you just don't need a huge amount of wire, it's a great machine. All right, we got everything prepped, and the next step I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get some cardboard and make a template, because this plate is gonna be out into here, probably stick out past about 1.5 inches on each side, and then it actually goes and straddles each one of these. So I'm gonna show y'all how I'm gonna try to figure out to make a template for this. That way we can transfer that to our material on the sawhorses, and then we'll program our seamless to go around that stencil or cardboard template. All right, we got our template made and everything fits pretty good. I'm gonna try to really hug the line right up in here when I lay it out with the seamless, so it definitely, we don't want it to get any bigger. So I'll have to fight this thing getting in with all these sections we're going around. I'd rather it be just a little loose than have to trim and grind and beat on it. But for the most part, pretty happy with it. We'll get this thing on the material and we'll go over setting up the seamless on this one. All right, so I got what I did just then, I connected all my corners because my soapstone's rectangle and it doesn't get up in that point good. And that ensures that everything, when I go to lay this out, that I can pick up on every intersecting line. And that's where we're gonna make all our points. It's very user-friendly when it comes to tracing out these lines. It's got a thing that will slip over this to give you a point, but I'm gonna use this. This is the same size as that barrel torch, and just slip it right in to the holder here, and it'll register where the center of that tip is gonna be. So this was one of the big selling points for me on this, is we can do this right here. Just made the template, laid it here. I don't have to create a file for a CNC table, even though that is probably a good way to do it. And I definitely don't have to send that cardboard template off to a steel supplier that cuts plate. That's just, it does not work for my workflow, waiting on those lead times. All right, so here I'm gonna lay this shape out and put this part into the seamless. And a real handy feature that it does, it allows me to select every point along this soapstone line, and it'll program the part, and then we're able to run it. So you just we'll tell it that we're gonna do a path, and then tell it whether we're gonna do a line or an arc. So in this case, all this right here is gonna be lines. So it's gonna ask me for the start point. So we'll run this pointer that we have in here right on the edge on our soapstone line, and then we'll tell it that's the start point. Now it's gonna wanna know an end point. So we'll run it down here to our next intersection and do the end point. And then it's gonna ask again, we're gonna keep repeating this process. Once I select the end point, then it's gonna ask me what I want next. So like I said, all these are gonna be lines. So we're gonna keep telling it that we want a line, and we're gonna keep telling it the end point. Line, end point. Now that I've come to that, I'm just gonna end it right there. Now this is not gonna be a closed shape. If it was, you could program this, you could save this part. I went ahead and used this edge, so I didn't have to cut down that. If I was gonna do a closed shape, I could save this part, and if we did another one of these next week, this part, we could put it in there, cp100 bottom, and we would always have this part. But I'm not gonna worry about doing that. So we're just gonna get ready to run this part right now. So since this is 2-inch thick hard ox 450, I'm gonna go ahead and do a test run with the pointer on there to make sure everything's gonna work. I'm gonna go ahead and place it. I set the thickness, gave it the tip size, put in there what kind of fuel that we're using, and then we can hit run. We'll see what it's gonna do. just like that. Just cut it all out without any problems. I thought I was gonna run into some problems right here because ideally I should have started on this end and went around, but I decided to go for it before I hit Pierce, and it ended up working out. I had it supported here, and I've got a jack stand under it right here, so I knew it wasn't gonna fall far. So now we'll get a little lifting eye welded on right here and get the crane and pull this thing out and get it ready to set in place. We just did a test fit. Everything's good and tight. We flipped it over. We ground all that heavy coating that comes on this AR material. And next thing, we're gonna get it on there and get it tacked in. And before we start any welding, we'll probably go ahead and start laying out for that side over there. All right, here we are working on cutting out some the top of the second shape. It's going to be exactly the width of the plate. That's how I ordered the plate. So we're going to make this cut along here, and then we're going to measure back and cut it to the correct width. All right, we're fixing to make a straight line across here. Super easy to use this C and seamless for straight lines. I'm not gonna say it'll take the place of a track torch in every situation. Sometimes a track torch could be a better solution, but for what I've used it for making shorter straight cuts, it'll go a little over 4 foot in a straight line. And it, to me, is faster setting up the point to point in this versus dealing with long tracks and having to move the motor around for a track torch. But they would both do this job very well, but the C and seamless does it very efficiently for us. All right, on all these pockets right here, they were wore down. They should be flush with this layer of new plate that we're putting on here. So what we did, we created, or Caden did all this, he created some dams, pretty much. Added some plate here to act like dams, so we wouldn't have to worry about trying to keep the metal on these edges. It just rolls right into it. We did that all the way on all these, and when we get done, when all this is flush, filled up with weld, we can easily take the torch and come straight down on this plate right here, washing it off, and it'll give you a perfect profile, nice and square all the way around. And that way you don't have to sit here and weld on the side and let it cool off and put too much metal so you can grind off, and it just works better. We still got a little bit to do here. We're going to rotate it to get in there, access it a little easier. Like I said, we're going to bevel these out to where it kind of comes up like this. Been quite the project. We're getting there though. We're going to do some hard surfacing on this. Might add some wear material, and then we've got to get a piece of, it's called half arrow, to go here, and it's going to give it a bevel. So that's just what it looks like from factory. So we're going to try to do our best to get it back to that look. I've been out here putting the last coat of paint on this bumper. Getting a little impatient. Still a little tacky, but I want to get it put on before it's time to go home. Put my fingerprints on it right there. But maybe a few more minutes and we'll get it rigged up. I'm just going to swing it around with a crane. Hopefully it'll hang pretty level and we can bolt it up there. This truck has been quite the project, but we've almost got it. Got to work on our storage here. But for the most part, hope it works out good for us. We're gonna build some drawer systems here, and then probably put some drawers here. I made this bumper big. I took the old bumper off and made this one to actually do some welding and fabricating on. One of the big things I wanted to do with the bumper was make it long enough for the internal storage to store those dudes without having to take off the whip. It's a big problem for me. A lot of the storage on this truck will not hold them. We throw them on the back and that's fine. But there's a lot of times to where we can get the truck close enough to what we're doing that we won't even need to pull this thing completely out. My plan is the whole plan with this bumper is to have 2 suitcases in it at all times, and then that Lincoln inverter that he's using now, the electric welder, I made it to where it would fit right here, and this machine will run it on 3-phase power. That way we would have 2 welding machines at all times on the truck, and we could both run dual shield, no problem. But this bay in this truck, the middle is plenty big enough to hold the little 325 Trailblazer that's in that truck. We won't carry it all the time, but we will take it on and off from time to time depending on what we're doing for the job. But this thing is bought this bed used, put it on this truck, and I had to put a PTO on this truck, and I don't recommend it. I recommend finding a truck set up like the way you want it, but we're in it too far to turn around now. It's gonna be it on this video. We're gonna probably do a little, maybe a short video of the hard surfacing, but we're gonna call it right here for this one. Hope y'all enjoyed this.